Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 406 of the Orange Pill Investor. Friday is roll day, so we'll be doing some of that. But I'm probably just going to be talking about fucking Bitcoin Core and nuts every day, briefly, before I get into it. Uh, First of all, Justin was the first person that I saw talking about it. So he kind of put me onto it, and then I started doing some research. Matthew Cratter started covering it, and um, I was kind of surprised. Since I didn't get into Bitcoin like in the OG days, I'm still like I'm still finding out even who some of the like OGs are. Like when I saw that Bitcoin documentary, uh, people are saying that they think Peter Todd is Satoshi or whatever. I'm like, I don't even know who half of these people are. So I'm just kind of like learning. So when I saw Peter Todd arguing for the Bitcoin Core side, I was like, wait a minute, this guy was like on the ground floor. And but I saw that debate that him and Shinobi had with Mechanic and apologize, I can't remember the other guy's name. And I was kind of unconvinced by the core side, but I do have to admit that there are some respected, intelligent people on the core side of the debate. And Hornet Hodel is the guy who actually gave me permission to use his Bitcoin compounding um, tool during my MSTR True North presentation. So I owe him, a debt of thanks for that. First of all, it's a really cool tool. Like, if you want to see if you can retire off your Bitcoin stack, then you can just put your stack in, pick an assumption of what you think Bitcoin's CAGR will decrease to over time. You put all this stuff in. It's very helpful to figure that out. Um, it's basically just assuming that you won't be able to borrow against it and generate a yield or whatever. Like this is legit. Like I'm Bitcoin's going to be worth so much that I can just peel off a little bit at a time and retire. So there's a lot, and he apparently seems to be on the Bitcoin core side of the debate. And for anyone who likes to think of themselves as being open-minded, the litmus test for whether you are or you are not is you will be willing to identify what your falsification criteria are. So if you're a Christian and you're arguing with an atheist, then the Christian would be able to say, okay, if you can prove that God doesn't exist, by providing proof A, B, and C, I will change my mind. And then the atheist would have to do the same thing. Like if you can prove that some miracle actually happened or whatever, um, you basically have to provide some kind of hurdle that if the other person is able to achieve, then you'll be like, okay, I changed my mind, you were right and I was wrong. But if it's just, you know I believe what I believe and I'm never going to change it regardless of what you say, then you're just having a shouting match. Um, and in a lot of things, it's okay to do that, right? Uh, Agree to disagree becomes a rather popular thing when people are just tired of arguing. But I kind of don't like it to a certain extent because if people really meant it, then that would be fine. But what most people mean when they say agree to disagree is I'll see you at the voting booth and I will try to vote for someone who will force you to live by my decision. um, that's what the fiat system means when agree to disagree is, yeah, I haven't been able to convince you with my argument, but I'm going to force you to do what I want you to do. And that's what kind of rubs me the wrong way about removing the op return limits is, um, you know, I totally respect what Hornet is doing, and I respect his intellect. But I don't really buy this argument. Three guys that are not technical, they should stick to their strong areas and sit this one out. I kind of think it's the opposite. Like, if you're the 80 IQ guy or the 120 IQ guy, it really doesn't matter. Everyone should have their say, and the people with the best arguments will win. So we'll either, all the technical people can present their technical arguments, all the non-technical people can present their arguments, and basically present their arguments by which technical people that they think gave the best best argument. I think it was a quote from RFK Jr. that he was describing, every time he presents an argument in court, there are experts for the defense and there are experts for the prosecution, and they've all got Harvard degrees and they've all been in the field for 20 fucking years, and they'll get up on stage or on the stand and say the exact opposite conclusion. So I think it's perfectly reasonable that a bunch of smart, well-intentioned people are going to be on both sides of this debate. But I think the only opinions that should be discouraged are the opinions that people are saying that they're discouraging other people's opinions. Like, we will either be able to convince people with good arguments, or the node runners will just decide that the nodes will pick which code they want to run, and hopefully it doesn't end up being like a hard fork or whatever. But if that's what happens, then I guess that's what happens. So if I'm going to hold myself to that standard, then I have to present my falsification criteria. So if the people that want to remove the op return filters want to convince me that that's the way to go, then they have to present an argument that clearly demonstrates that removing the filters will actually result in less spam. So I'm just going to go through this. And I should say also that I really appreciate that Hornet is engaging, because, as Bitcoiners, when you've heard an argument once, twice, 5 times, you're willing to spend the time to argue. And after you've heard it 100 times, you're just like, fuck it, have fun staying poor. Like, I don't have time for this shit. So I appreciate that he's engaging. And, there's a little bit of like point scoring here. Like, this comment of mine really doesn't mean anything. But, I'm basically saying that there's currently bloat being put onto, the nodes are being bloated. And that's going to lead to decentralization, because whoever doesn't have enough storage capacity to hold the entire blockchain is going to limit the number of people that can run nodes, right? And then Hornet saying, I'm agreeing with the other side. And what I'm thinking means by that is that the people pushing to remove op return will somehow have a net decrease in bloat. And so that's what I need someone to be able to explain. And if it's so obvious that the technical people are right, then it should be very easy for these people to explain it in a convincing way. But as of yet, I mean, I've only heard Krater's stuff talking about it. I've listened to Mechanics podcast, and I've listened to the debate with Peter Todd, Shinobi, and mechanic and his partner. And so it does give me a little bit of pause that, intelligent people like Hornet are on the other side. So I'm definitely trying to see if I've got this wrong. But at the same time, like, I have faith that Bitcoin is going to win. So I kind of don't mind being wrong. Because I trust the majority of the rest of the Bitcoin network to be right. So that's kind of like, let me see, does this fit into the don't trust, verify, right? So I'm not trusting, I'm trying to verify for myself, but then at the same time, it's kind of okay if I fuck it up, right? If I come out on the not side and I'm actually wrong and the core people are right, then I think, the majority of Bitcoiners will get it right and they will override my shitty decision. So I don't mind being vocal, right? I'm not a technical person. And, some people will say, look, if you're not technical, you should just sit this one out. But I disagree, because when you try to plead your case and then somebody just rips you a new one and it's like eviscerates your argument, I think that makes it more real for you. And even if you don't come around, um, there might be some people that watch this debate, and let's say I get it wrong and I'm too stubborn to get it right. I still don't listen to reason. I think there's at least a decent chance that some of the people that either watch the show or, have, 28 views on what Hornet is saying, um, you know, if Hornet's right, then maybe 20 of these viewers will agree with him, and maybe the other 8 idiots will will come down on my side. Um, so I don't think anyone should fear voicing their opinion for fear of being wrong. Like, just go ahead and be wrong, and let the free market decide. So we'll see. More to come on this, but let me just check the chats and see if anybody has an opinion on this. What's up, Joshi? What's up, Kanal? Barquest says you can't prove something doesn't exist. Yeah, you're right. You can't prove a negative. So maybe that was a bad example. But and it's okay though also to say that you believe something on faith, right? It's perfectly fine for the faithful to be faithful, but there's a lot of uh, you know religious apologists, and it's even, I've watched many debates between Christians and Muslims and Christians and Jews and Jews and Muslims, and a lot of times they'll try to present factual evidence of why either, their God is real or why their particular version is real and the others is not. But those types of arguments kind of come down to faith, and I think it's better to just say that, like, okay, I'm just going to choose. But don't do that, but then also say that you're open-minded. Just admit that in this one particular situation, this thing is important to you, and it's not going to be like a logical debate thing. That's completely fine too. What's up, J94? What's your take on MSTR? Anything change on your thoughts about the stock since you invested in it? Anything change about the stock since I invested in it? Yeah, I think their ability to navigate the market has actually gotten better. With the preferreds, I think that's going to be extremely accretive. And I'm kind of hoping that they're going to be able to use some of those levers to lever up during bull markets so that we get as much pump as possible, and then lever down maybe going into bear markets to prevent us from a leveraged correction. I don't know if they're thinking about it this way. And I don't know if the preferreds, the liquidity on the preferreds is going to be like sophisticated and built up enough to have that type of effect. But the convertible bonds are kind of like slower. It takes a while to get into them, and then they last for a while, and then you got to deal with the arb traders shorting it and longing it and hedging it. Whereas with the preferreds, they can just do it anytime they want. Once they get approval to do however many millions of shares or billions of dollars, they can just pull those levers quicker and maybe be a little bit more responsive. When I, years ago when I started trading strategy, it was just as a leverage play. So only in 2024 did I really even become like a fanboy. It was really just no more or less of a believer in strategy than anything else. And if I could go to Palantir and get more premium than strategy, then okay, cool, I'm just going to trade Palantir. But at some point I became orange pilled, and I'm like, okay, I'm only going to deal with Bitcoin derivatives. And even at that time, strategy was basically just the stock that was providing the most premium as an option seller. That was all I cared about. But somewhere around Quant Bros 1, I was like, holy shit, they're going to they're going to stack so much Bitcoin because they have a legal mechanism to counterfeit money. That's what selling ATM shares basically means. And so if I could invest in the Federal Reserve and just profit off of their counterfeiting money, I'd be a fool not to do it. And so, strategy can just print infinite shares. If the MNAV ever gets back closer to 1 again, I really would like them to consider buying their own shares back. So, basically reversing the ATM. They've already dug their heels in so much about never selling your Bitcoin that they probably wouldn't sell Bitcoin to do it. But I think it would be the right move. But unfortunately, I think they've kind of handcuffed themselves by preaching you never sell your Bitcoin so often that they'd probably take a PR hit if they did. But if it makes sense to sell strategy at a 2 or 3x MNAV to buy Bitcoin, if strategy becomes as cheap as Bitcoin, then it seems like the reverse would be true, that you'd peel off some Bitcoin and buy strategy with it, which would pump the strategy price back up, and then you could just go back to hammering the ATM again. So no telling whether they will ever do that. But they're changing the thoughts about the stock. So I think they're being innovative and courageous, but I think they're probably, they admit that they got into the Bitcoin treasury strategy out of desperation, and they didn't know it was going to work. So they're probably like an inventor experimenting with things. So the thoughts of like, Sailor's an MIT engineer, so he knows exactly how all this shit's going to work out. Like some of this stuff is probably like trying to create the first airplane. So who knows? Who knows if Strike and Strife will flop? I mean, they seem like great products to me, but maybe some of the stuff that they come out with won't work. Right? They're not infallible. But I do still think in 10 years, Strategy and Tesla will be the top two companies in the top of the S&P 500. I think that's pretty inevitable. Good question. Deeply, they are saying op return limit adjustment removal is proposed to possibly reduce the UTXO set bloat we're currently seeing. I was originally against by default. Don't change if ain't broke. Now indifferent. Yeah. I know that they're saying that the filters is not a guarantee that spam won't hit the block, but there are claims that the spam is being reduced by some amount, right? So the nodes that add a filter are basically just refusing to forward that transaction to other nodes. So there is a little bit of a network effect going on there. If they're the more nodes that are forwarding transactions to other nodes, makes it more likely that those transactions are going to get picked up in the next block. So I don't know. I think some of the people on the core side don't think that we understand that that's how that works, because they keep they keep repeating it as if we don't understand that the filter doesn't prevent it from getting into the blockchain. Like if other nodes aren't not running the filters and they go ahead and verify the transaction and forward it on, then it gets through. So, but I don't know, if 99% of node runners started running knots, I think it would be pretty damn hard for for spam to get through. That could have its own unintended consequences that I'm not aware of. Let's see. For me, it comes down to incentives. Will removing op return limits actually reduce UTXO bloat or not? It's not super clear. Yeah, exactly. And the way that I've heard it described is they're just saying, well, we can't stop it, so we're going to have them submit the spam in the least bad way. But why can't we just fix the spam issue completely? I don't know if this is true, but I think I did read somewhere that the ability to even do this was maybe a bug in SegWit. Like when SegWit was implemented, maybe we didn't realize this was going to happen. Yeah, my desire, let me just state clearly, I want a solution that keeps Bitcoin money, not Bitcoin as a way to make people store JPEGs on their hard drives against their will. Against their will might be a little bit too strong, because the node runners can, are not forced to run a node. You can just stop running a node. But if I'm going to run a node, I don't want people's JPEGs on it. I mean, you could, you know, monkey butts or whatever is one thing, but you could put illegal images. I'm sure you can figure out some really bad illegal images to put on the blockchain that I personally don't want stored on my computer. So I would be totally fine with just getting rid of all of the file bullshit completely. Dex says, I worry about any changes made to Bitcoin network, and I am also tired of people trying to bloat the network with monkey asshole JPEGs. Yeah. And so, yes, I'm in the ossify camp, like only fix bugs, but to me, this is a bug. The ability to do this was a change to the system that I don't think should have ever been made, right? So I think patching people's ability to put monkey asshole JPEGs, as you said, to me is a bug that needs to be fixed. I would have preferred that we stayed ossified without this ability to do this, and I would like to fix the glitch, which is one of my favorite quotes from Office Space. I'd like to just wake up one day and spam doesn't exist, and we won't even need the fucking filters because it's just not allowed. And I'm sure the technical folks can tell me why I'm a fool for thinking that. All right, Dex says, Josh has me worried going net neutral. I don't know whether to sell 10 to 20% of my strategy shares in case we revisit 84K, but I don't want to miss out on a breakout to new all-time highs. Yeah, he spooked the shit out of me yesterday as well. So I'm feeling the exact same thing because so March 2024, I've told the story half a dozen times, maybe a dozen. I had 300 shares of strategy. I sold, price was 1,200. I sold the 1,400 strikes. Pretty safe, right? It was like 15% out of the money. And the price went to 1,700. It was like, right, yeah, whatever, somewhere in here. And I missed out on like, what is that, $90,000 of upside when that happened. So then I got kind of shell shocked and I was like real hesitant about selling covered calls here. And so I didn't collect as much premium from April to September as I could have. But then the premium that I was selling here, I was stacking long calls. And so I did very well in November. However, because I still had PTSD from missing out on all that upside, that I FOMO'd into like, okay, we're going to $1,000 a share. And not only did I not take off enough leverage here, but I rolled some calls up. I think I had like the 530 strikes. I rolled some of them up to the 600, the 700, the 890s, rolled up to some 1080s. Well, all of the 1080s got just, for June and July, got completely destroyed. And now we've got the same fucking decision to make all over again. Because this little dot right here, make this bigger. This dot right here could be this dot. And we could be going back down, 25%. And then maybe we'll get this dot again. And then maybe we'll get this dot again before we get this dot again. There's just no way to know. So it felt bad missing out on upside here. And it also felt like shit not taking profits here and riding it all the way down to here. So now we have to choose our poison. So is this dot, Or is this dot this dot, and it's about to go nuclear? Josh seems to be like, he must really respect the Chanos guy. I know people were trying to dunk on him because he lost his shirt in Tesla. But I guess he was a very, I don't know, overall throughout his career, I guess he's been successful, right? I guess. I don't know the guy. I don't know anything about him, actually. But as soon as I saw that, Josh was taking this very seriously and he was talking about an overall market crash. So this Chanos guy might not know jack shit about strategy. He may completely be wrong about strategy, but he may have some insights on the overall macroeconomic landscape and the cracks in that. I've kind of felt all along that the market was going to take an absolute dump, which was going to force the Fed. Like the Fed doesn't do anything right by choice. They only do the right thing like after it's too late, right? So I guess go back max. So before COVID, God, COVID seems like a nothing burger now. I mean, just looking at the chart. But all-time highs, and then we dropped. What is this? 20%, 30%? Let's see. We went from 320 to 257. So that's $60. At, yeah, like 20, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 25%, right? In short order. And then everybody freaked out. The Fed lowered interest rates, and then we got this delicious pump here. Fed raised rates, we got a crash. And I kind of thought that tariffs was going to do the same thing. So we dropped from 609 to 505. So that's like 1/6. What's 1/6? Like 16%, something like that. I thought this was going to be enough for like the Fed to hold some kind of emergency meeting and lower interest rates, but they really didn't. It was probably political. That was probably just them thumbing their noses at Trump. And so then we got the tariff pause and we got this recovery, but it just doesn't give me warm fuzzies. And what really spooked me the most was when Trump said to buy stocks. I'm like, oh, okay, that's got to be some inverse Kramer shit right there. Like, that just feels like an okie doke. Not that he'll be wrong in the long term, because if the market crashes again back down here or lower, then the Fed probably would have to act. And as soon as they lower interest rates based on some kind of emergency meeting or whatever, it's fucking V-shaped recovery all over again. Now Josh is willing to forego some upside to avoid the pain of that crash if it happens. That's my take. I haven't like discussed it with him or anything, but trying to decipher his poems and shit, that's the sense that I get, is that he did specifically come right out and answer someone's question. They're like, what do you mean? A problem with strategy or the markets? And he did specifically answer that question, like, without it replying in a haiku. And he said the markets. And so that kind of just fits in very nicely with my general sense that all of these fiat fuckers are just too stupid to do what they need to do without the market just forcing their hand. That's a long way of me saying that I am kind of nervous as well. And so he locked in his profits, right? He basically hedged out all of his leveraged positions, and they're basically kind of frozen at this point. And I was like, that I've never done that, but I was like, holy crap, I could, if I don't want to close these positions and take my profits, right? I could close this position and collect $127,000 and pay my taxes and all that good shit, or instead of selling the 530s, I could sell the 540s or the 520s and basically hedge out that position. And this would be taking leverage off the table, right? The profit is almost identical to if I just closed them out, but it could have some tax ramifications as well, because I've had these Decembers on for 197 days. If I can just gut it out for another 170 days, then I can pay long-term gains on this. So instead of him closing his positions out, or instead of me closing this position out, I can just hedge it out and then not have to close my position, but I could take the profits. But the thing is, it kind of fits in with what I've been doing, right? Because I've just been taking the tax hit, right? So if I was going to take all this leverage off, it's going to give me about 120 grand. Well, you know what I can do with 120 grand? I can buy 300 shares. So I can still have 300 delta worth of exposure by taking profits here. Now this is currently worth 900 delta, right? So if strategy goes up $100 a share, keeping this leverage makes it seem like I've got 900 shares. So I'd make what, 90 grand? If I take all this leverage off and I buy 300 shares and the price goes up $100 a share, then I only make 30 grand. But it's not like I'm not making anything. I could even start selling covered calls on those 300 shares. Or I could just turn this into a ratio spread, and I could sell basically 2 covered calls per 2 leaps, because each one is 46 delta. Add 2 of those up together, that's 92 delta. That's basically, it's 8 shares away from 100 shares. And if the price goes up, the delta is going to increase. So it's going to even become even more like shares the more that the price goes up. So I can close these positions if I'm scared and take profits, but then turn the leverage into shares. I can hedge the position out like Josh did, or I can turn this into a ratio spread, and I could just go, I can sell some weeklies. I could sell like 10 weeklies for next week at, where's the price? 10 weeklies at 420 or something, 425, whatever. Collect 6 grand. And if I do that every week, it would take me 20 weeks to accumulate the 120 grand that I could collect now if I just take profits. If I was super aggressive with it, I could sell, right at the money, collect about $1,000 a pop, 10 grand a week. If I do that for 12 weeks, I would collect the $100,000 that it's going to take me until December to collect if I just hedge out the position now, right? Because to hedge this out, I've got to go to December. Where's December, right? I would be collecting $120,000 today that I can do whatever I want with, but to actually collect it, I have to wait for the theta decay to erode this position. And I don't think that's really Josh's purpose. I think he just wants to hedge this position for, I don't know. He said he thought maybe something would happen in the next month, some kind of flash crash. I think that's what he said. So he wouldn't be selling this to collect theta decay necessarily, which it wouldn't really make sense to do that 217 days out anyway. Theta's too small. So I think it's just parking. It's just sitting on the sidelines and parking the position for him. Now, if the price, if nothing bad happens and the price goes to 1,000, yeah, he's sitting on the sidelines. But he may be watching for certain things to happen, and then he'll remove that hedge position. And I don't know what the criteria would be. I kind of like to joke that technical, like TA is basically just financial astrology. I don't really put any faith in it. But I think support and resistance are a thing. It's kind of like a psychological memory that the market has for support and resistance. I think those seem to be relatively real things. And so if we want to see $1,000 a share, then the $500 a share all-time highs has to become support and not resistance. So I'm not really worried about missing out on strategy being 750 or 1,000 until we go above 500, and then 500 becomes support. Then I'll be worried about a 2x move from 500 to 1,000. But could we just rocket up from 400 to 1,000? I suppose. But I mean, we do have a little bit of advance notice. Like we can't cross 500 without knowing about it, right? So maybe if we get to 550 and then 500 becomes support, maybe Josh will take these positions off and be like, oh, okay, well, this invalidates my fear of the flash crash. I don't know if that, if that's something that I'm just hypothesizing that there could be certain things that happen that would cause him to take off his hedge position. But it has spooked the shit out of me, and I thought about it quite a bit yesterday and today. But doing it my way is at least in keeping with selling calls under 60 days to expiration. So this isn't fully hedging my position, but those 25, 30 strikes, I could go out here. The expected move is at 480. So I could go out here and sell 10 of the 500 strikes. And collect about $300 a week or something, maybe times 10, $3,000 a week. That doesn't fully hedge my position, right? If we get a flash crash down to 200 or 300 a share again, this is not going to protect me like hedging it out would with something, with a very similar strike and expiration date as these leverage positions. Or I could hedge out half of them and then sell 5 covered calls against the other half. There's all kinds of different ways I can do this. It just depends on whether I fear missing out on upside more than I fear the pain of watching my account dwindle back down 50% again in the short term. If I don't mind gutting that out and just not panic selling, then I can just do nothing and just, the only thing that would get wrecked on a flash crash that doesn't recover by June would be these September longs. And I've only got about 10 of them, so that's about 8 grand. So if we flash crash, I could potentially lose this entire position if we don't get a recovery. Yeah, I think I'm not going to I'm not going to hedge these out, but I think I will sell some covered calls against them. But let's do the rest of my shit first. Let's see how many. Okay, there's only a few more comments. I can get through these. Deeply, I'm not concerned about Josh's positioning now that I understand that he's putting on those spreads to defer taxes and lock in millions worth of gains, but notable and not often mentioned that he put 6 figures into MSTZ, a 2x short, no shit, and closed his IBIT calls this week. Interesting. Joshy says, "It feels like we will see more consolidation in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I just sold some more 620 calls, super far out of the money in case we turn completely different turn than what we expect." Let's see, deck. General setup looks like we are nearing breakout. If Josh might be special and sell in May and go away, and the market makers like to make the opposite happen. Yeah, I know. The sell in May and go away thing, I'm like, it just seems so Bitcoin to not do that. But then I mean, up until now, it's pretty much followed the market. J94, we're going to have a blow off top, then recession for sure. Yeah, I'm not counting on a super cycle. Danimal, he sold in the money calls though, hasn't he? Isn't he going to have shares called away, especially if the flash crash doesn't happen? What am I missing? Yeah, he would have those called away. Yeah, so he's hedged out basically 99% of the position. I think he sold just below the strikes of the longs, so that technically turns it into a call bear spread, meaning it would be successful. I think he had the 325s. It would be successful if strategy expires under 325 a share. But the only thing that he would win in that case is the difference between the strikes, and it's only $5 wide. But I can't remember if he had like 500 contracts or whatever. So yeah, if strategy finished below 325, then the calls that he sold would expire worthless, and he'd keep the $5 a contract. If strategy finishes above 325, then he would lose the $5 a contract. But he would already have pocketed the $1 million worth of gains on the longs because he sold $1 million worth of calls against them, basically. But again, I don't think he's selling these calls to hold them till expiration. That's not the point. I think he just wants to sit on the sidelines and watch. And then if strategy goes to 600 a share or whatever, at some point he'll probably have to exit those positions. And yes, it would be like he had shares called away. So if he's got, I can't remember how many shares he was trying to get to. Was he trying to get to 100,000? Regardless, let's just say he's got 50,000 shares. If he misses out on the upside from 400 to 600, that would be like a 50% move. He would basically end up with like 30% less shares than he would have if he had not hedged his position. So yes, it would be like having shares called away if you want to look at it that way. Let's see, J Digital. Josh also has me a little uneasy with his latest moves, but with all the adoption I'm seeing in Bitcoin on an almost hourly basis, I've decided to just sit tight in strategy. It'll pump if Bitcoin hits all-time highs. Yeah, and I think the shareholders can literally just do nothing if they want to. If they want to just go to sleep, like if you're experienced at diamond handsing your Bitcoin through bear markets, you can probably diamond hand yourself through a flash crash without being a pussy and panic selling. I think it's more stressful for the people who are holding these September 1080s and December leaps and January leaps and all of this happy horse shit. It's much more because we have the timer is ticking. We can't just, if the flash crash happens, right when I'm planning to roll these or take profits, then I can get boned. So but anyway, like selling a call out into December just makes me feel weird. It just doesn't work for me. But anyway, let me just do all my regular shit, and then I'll decide whether to sell some covered calls on these. I'll probably sell like 10. Okay, so this is about what I sold it for. This is not quite half of what I sold it for. This is not quite less than half of what I sold it for. So I'm just going to stand pat on these and do nothing, except that I spent a shitload of money in Florida with all the travel. And I just bought a new laptop because this one's 5 years old. I'm going to see if I can run a node on the old laptop. Not, of course, until I'm convinced otherwise. Until Hornet can twist my arm and convince me that Core is not being bought and paid for by the same fuckers that tried to co-opt Bitcoin during the block size wars. It just kind of smells like that again. But anyway, we'll see if I can be convinced. Not that my opinion matters all that much, but yeah. So anyway, nothing to do there. Nothing to do there. Now with Tesla is way up, and so I should probably take some profits here. I'm gonna close half of my 2 poor man's covered calls, and I might as well close 2 of the longs to pay for it, right? So I'm gonna have to pay $4,800 here, and conveniently enough, I didn't I didn't mastermind this or anything, but looks like half of my leaps will pay for that. So I'm just going to close position, and I'm going to go default quantity, which is basically 1 of each of the poor man's covered calls, and then 2 of the deep out of the money leaps. And I'm getting better at reducing the sound before I blow people's ears out. So that's actually almost perfect. If I can get this to, did it fill? No, it looks like it filled. I didn't hear it ding though. Okay, cool. So that gives me 18 to play with, but 10 I did a withdrawal for 10 grand so I can pay off my credit cards and shit that I blew up. Pay for this laptop that I just purchased. So that gives me 8 to play with. Let me go ahead and sell. So when deciding whether to put on a covered call, there's two things that are going to go into the decision of whether it's like the optimal time. So the optimal time to sell a covered call is after the price has gone up, which on a recent basis is certainly true, right? Over the last 3 months, we're up 20%. But IV, unfortunately, is still pretty low. So of those two factors, I'm only 1 for 2. So I'm tempted though to just be very aggressive with these things, because I'm kind of looking for any excuse to take leverage off. So I'm just going to be very aggressive with this. I'm going to go to the $4.15s. And this is kind of a ratio spread. I'm basically, normally I would sell a covered call against 1 leaps position, but those 530s are too small. And I'm not even sure if T-Trade is going to let me do this. We'll see if they know to connect this to my longs or not. So this is going to be collecting another, basically 10. Did that work? What the hell? Yeah, there we go. So I've got 15 covered calls against shares with some upside built in, right? I've got 1 425. I've got 9 450s. Actually, I've got 14 450s. So there's some upside built into there, maybe 15%. And now I've got 10 covered calls against these. If we run up to 450, 500 a share, whatever, then I'll just peel off these positions or some of these positions, whatever. That's giving me even more money to spend. I had considered even maybe just buying some Strike or Strife, collecting a little bit of interest. I think they pay in June. But I don't know. It just seems so weak. If we hit $1,000 a share, maybe I'll plow half of it into Strike or something. Strife, I don't know. We'll see. Or maybe Tesla will be on a dip, and I'll just move it over to Tesla. All right, but I've got 18 grand to spend. That's probably at least 40 shares. Let's do 45 shares and see if that 18.2 debit. That's cutting it kind of close. Let me do. Let's just do the 40 that I wanted to do in the first place. So taking off some leverage and just adding some share exposure. Okay, that didn't fill. There we go. All right, so if we get the flash crash, at least I won't lose any leveraged, or I'll lose less leveraged value. Protected a little bit with the covered calls, and I've converted some of this long exposure into straight shares. So I haven't exited my strategy positions. I've just reduced my overall delta exposure. All right, I think I am good with that. I forgot to check MSTY and IMST. Probably still fine. All right, the joint account. Got the one covered call that doesn't need to come off yet. I've got the one poor man's covered call. Holy smokes, I've had this damn thing for 259 days. I only got to hold it for another 100 days to pay long-term cap gains on it. So I'll probably continue to just sell covered calls against this for as long as I can. This one's only been on for a week, so nothing to do there. Should I take off any of this leverage? This December 1080s like break even. I could make like 25% on this maybe. But I can hold this one for long term. So I think I'll just stand pat here. But Tesla, should I take off this position? I've only got one. If I take this off, then I have no Tesla exposure on this one. So I think I'll leave it. I'll leave that one. All right, I added on this vertical, so nothing to do there. I've got the two 1080s. I could, close these out for basically double 2x profit. But I really just have this one poor man's covered call. I got wrecked on this thing. I'm still down like 99 grand. Offset by whatever I've collected selling covered calls against it, but still. This has been brutal. Yeah, I don't think there's anything for me to do here. All right, the 5K account holding strong over 20 grand. Started trading it in March 2024. 516. So I've got two CLSK puts expiring today. Let's close those out for $2 each. That'll release 1,900 in collateral. Got another Riot put. Buy that back for $1. Nothing else expiring. So these stupid ass Wolf $3 calls, I'm tempted to just dump them. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so the price of HUT is what? Where is it? 387. And there's only 91 cents in this. That means there's only 4 cents of extrinsic value in here. So there's no reason for me to keep this on. This is a waste of my time. This is a giant loser. Let's look at my average price. I think I got assigned at like $5 a share. Oof, $6 a share. So I'm going to take a 50% haircut on this position, but it's just too cheap for me to reliably sell premium on. So I think it's better to just admit defeat, throw in the towel on this. Sell. Can't I do sell all? There we go. Boom. Done. That'll give me another couple $100 to play with. Let's see, my 425 call, or sorry, 620, my 620, 425 call should still be cooking for a little bit longer. The 627 puts that me and my brother-in-law sold, those will just cook. I think I already took some profits on these 1080s, so I would like to hold these through June, or this one last remaining one through June. And then this is my long call. I got to make a decision on this in July. All right, I got $5,000 in cash. 2 is obligated already, so I've got 3131 to play with. So I'm just going to go back to CLSK since I don't have any of those positions. And I can sell 3 puts with the 3 grand. I'll just go out to next week, and I'm going to be very aggressive with it. I just want to collect as much premium as possible. I'm putting up $28.50 in options collateral, and I'm collecting, $25 a pop. So that's between 2 and 3% return on capital, right? $25, collecting $25 on a $950 worth of collateral. Oh, I don't have enough. Thought I did. Okay. Not sure what that's about. Let's see what my buying power changes to. I should still have $1,200 unless something hasn't settled. Let me just try to sell another one and see what happens. Okay. I don't know why it wouldn't let me sell 3 at once, but it worked this time. All right, I should basically have no buying power. Yeah, I got like $350 worth of buying power. So this should be done. All right, let's check chats and call it a day. Andre, didn't Josh sell all of his strategy shares? No, he hedged them out. So and actually, I don't even think he really, he might have had a separate portfolio with actual shares. What he had were 325 calls for maybe December. And so let's say that I wanted to lock in my profits. Well, this is a losing position, so that's a bad fucking example. Oh, actually, I didn't go all the way to the... Oh, okay, so my bad. This is the challenge account. I do have more trades to make. I'll come back to your question. So I got wrecked on my $400 strike, right? I got paid $470. I'm going to have to pay basically $700 to roll it. So let's just roll to next week. And let's go. Where's my down arrow? I'm going to go slightly out of the money so that I can collect a little bit of a credit. And not have to like pay out of pocket for this thing. And so this is the danger of selling these really aggressive covered calls, is I sold it for 4 and had to buy it back for 7. Luckily, the price didn't run so far that I wasn't able to roll it for a credit. If it was something like this, this would be much easier to roll. So I sold it for $13.50. It's going to cost me $18.50 because the price went up to roll this. But because the delta is much smaller, I should be able to roll this to a higher strike to give myself more upside. I'm going to try to go all the way to the expected move, but nope, that's a slight debit. So I don't want to roll it for a debit. So I think the highest I'm going to be able to roll it out to maybe like 450. So I'm rolling the 425 to the 450, capturing a small credit and giving myself another $25 worth of upside. Actually, you know what? I wonder if I can roll all 3 of these at once. There we go. I like that. Let's see, can I move them all up at once? Ooh. Why is that such a big credit? Okay, because I'm basically breaking even on those 450s. All right. I think I like that. That gets me to the expected move. That gives me even more upside and a small credit. So I'm going to one or more order entry legs that are referring to the same security. Each leg should refer to a unique security. Okay. Maybe I have to do it one at a time. Okay, so this is going to be for a tiny debit, but just for convenience sake, I'm going to put these both on the all on the same strike because I'm already planning to do the other one to this strike. And I'm going to have to pay a little bit more. Now let's roll these. There we go. All right, we got fills. All right, 570 shares, 5 covered calls. $1,500 to spend. So I think I'm just going to keep adding shares. I'm not. I could add. Whoops. You know, I could add back 2 more of these things, but which would make sense at low IV environment. But I don't think I'm inclined to add any more leverage at this point. So 4 shares would cost me 1,600. So it looks like I can only get 3 shares. My goal is to try to get this up to, up to 600 shares, and then I can sell 6 covered calls. 27 shares would cost me what? 10, 11,000. If I close all of this position, that's just enough to get me to the 100 shares that I need. But if I do that, then I would be fully covered and I don't have any leverage positions. Interesting. Yeah, I think I'm going to hold on to my leverage just in case we run up to 500 again. I'm not ready to pull the trigger on taking all the leverage off. I got rid of all my poor man's covered calls already, so I think I'm okay here. I think I'm happy with this. What's up, Dana? Or I'm sorry, I should say aloha. Let's see, Strike and Strife are looking like my bear market play. I had planned to roll into Tesla on strategy levels, but now I'm considering splitting between Tesla and fixed income. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way to convince myself to buy some as well. Andre, could Josh have just sold his long calls and then bought new long calls if a dip happened? Any difference? Yeah, the difference is that if those are long call leaps positions that he can hold for 365 days, then he can close those positions at long-term capital gains taxes and pay 20% taxes instead of 30. So there is an advantage to hedging it out the way that he did for tax purposes. Josh UT, I also feel like we should wait a little. 630 is not far away. And as long as we stay even at this level, S&P 500 inclusion is inevitable. It's a question of when, not if. Yeah. If we get S&P 500 inclusion for Q2, they'll start front running it, and maybe we actually get included by the end of the year. So there's plenty of time in there for this crash to happen, though. So I guess I took a little bit of my leverage off the table, not all of it, but instead of hedging out the entire position like Josh did, I kind of stayed with my short-term covered call strategy instead of hedging this out completely. So I did take away basically almost all of my upside, but I should be able to capture premiums much faster this way. And then of course, I took the money and used it to pay bills and then add a few shares. I think I added a few shares, didn't I? Yeah, added like 40 shares. Or is it in the other account? Yeah, that's in this account. All right. I think that's it for now. Appreciate everybody tuning in.